Imagine Bengal, mid-1700s. It's this incredibly rich province, bustling, full of trade, ancient traditions holding things together.
But just under that surface, something huge is brewing. A massive shift is coming, one that's going to reshape, well, everything for the subcontinent.
Exactly. And this deep dive, we're focusing right in on that. Really fascinating and often pretty turbulent time of early British company rule in India. Specifically, we want to unpack a really unique experiment in governing the dual government of Bengal.
Yeah, and you'll get a sense of how it even started, who really gained from it, and critically, the often catastrophic fallout for millions. And then we'll look at how Warren Hastings, this key figure, steps onto the scene, tries to fix the mess, and ends up laying down administrative tracks that kind of surprisingly lasted for more than a century.
Right. And for this, we're drawing on quite a bit solid historical accounts, detailed looks at the big battles like Buxar, overviews of company rule, Hastings reforms.
It's a rich mix of sources, definitely. Should give us some really interesting insights to explore.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, maybe. The East India Company. It literally just started as a trading company, way back in 1600.
Right, just traders, setting up little posts, factories they called them, Masulipatnam, Surat, Madras, focused on commerce.
So how does this group of merchants turn into this massive political force running huge parts of India? It wasn't overnight, was it?
No, not exactly gradual either. The real turning point, the acceleration, came from two key military wins. First, Plassey in 1757. That was big.
Sure.
But the truly game-changing one, the Battle of Buxar, 1764. Because, get this, the English didn't just beat the Nawab of Bengal, Mir Qasim. They also defeated the Mughal emperor himself, Shah Alam II. That victory basically announced the company as the major power in northern India, almost overnight.
Wow, okay, defeating the emperor. And that victory leads directly to something specific, right? The Treaty of Allahabad.
Exactly. 1765, Robert Clive seals the deal. And Shah Alam II, well, he essentially hands over the Diwani to the company.
The Diwani being the right to collect taxes.
Yes.
The revenue. The revenue rights, precisely. For Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, these incredibly wealthy provinces.
And what did the emperor get in return?
An annual payment.
Yeah.
26 lakh rupees. But the real prize, the control of the purse strings for these massive regions, went to the company.
And it wasn't just the direct revenue, was it? They got control over other functions, too.
They also got 53 lakh rupees for handling nizamat functions. That's things like military defense, police, administering justice.
So money and control over key state functions. They're getting deeply embedded now.
Absolutely. Huge financial leverage right at the heart of the region's governance.
Which brings us right to Robert Clive again. He's the Governor General of Bengal. And in 1765, he brings in this dual government system. What was the system? Why set it up like that?
Well, dual is maybe a bit misleading. It was a split, yes, but a very, very unequal one. The company took the power, the money, the Diwani revenue collection, civil law, the profitable side, you could say.
Okay, so the company gets the cash cow. What about the Nawab, like Najim-ud-Dowla, Mir Jafar's son? He was nominally left with the nizamat. So police, criminal justice, keeping order, the difficult, expensive parts.
But hang on. If the company controlled the money.
Exactly. That's the key. The Nawab had the responsibility on paper, but zero power. The company controlled all the funds. They even nominated the key Indian officials who were supposed to run the Nawab's administration, like Muhammad Reza Khan and Raja Sitab Roy. They were basically company appointments running the Nawab's side.
So the Nawab is just a figurehead, a puppet ruler.
Pretty much, yeah. He looked like the authority, but he depended entirely on the company for every rupee, for any military backup. The real power, the sovereignty, sat firmly with the company.
It sounds like a system designed for the company's benefit. Maximum gain, minimum responsibility.
That's a perfect way to put it. They could rake in Bengal's wealth without having to deal with the messy day-to-day business of actually governing, of worrying about public welfare. Profit without the headaches.
And that core idea, power without responsibility, that had some truly awful consequences, didn't it? It wasn't just flawed. It sounds like it actively created problems.
Oh, absolutely. It was structurally built for neglect. Think about it. One side gets all the rewards, the other gets the burdens and the people. They fall right into that gap where nobody's really accountable for their well-being.
So what did that look like on the ground?
A breakdown in administration. Neither the company nor the powerless Nawab really focused on the public good. Law and order suffered badly. Theft, robbery, it all increased. Ordinary people bore the brunt of that chaos.
And economically,
Yep.
beyond just the breakdown of order.
Rampant exploitation. Company employees, for example, misuse these things called DASTACs, trade permits.
Ah, yes, the permits that let them trade without paying duties.
Exactly. So company officials could trade tax-free, while local Indian merchants had to pay all the normal duties.
That sounds completely unfair. How could local traders even compete?
They couldn't. It ruined them.
Yeah.
And it also massively reduced the Nawab's own tax income, making him even weaker. This abuse just crushed local industries. Bengal was famous for its silk, its cotton textiles. These industries were severely damaged.
Yeah.
The company started dictating terms: quality, how much to produce, the price they'd pay, often using harsh methods, punishments even. Many skilled artisans were forced to just give up, change jobs, or leave Bengal entirely.
And layered on top of this internal damage, there was this larger issue historians call the drain of wealth. Can you explain that? How did it work?
Yeah, this is fascinating and quite devastating. Once the company controlled Bengal's revenues, the Diwani, they largely stopped doing what trading companies normally did, bringing in silver or gold bullion to buy Indian goods.
So what did they use instead?
They used Bengal's own tax revenues to buy Bengali goods. Then they shipped those goods back to Britain or elsewhere for huge profits.
Wait, so Bengal was effectively paying for its own goods to be taken away.
Precisely. It was a massive outflow of wealth. Millions of pounds sterling just drained out of the region in a few short years, like between 1766 and 1768 alone. It made the company rich, but it impoverished Bengal.
Unbelievable. And the impact wasn't just on trade and industry, right? Agriculture suffered too.
Terribly. The company's approach to land revenue was brutal. They basically auctioned off the right to collect taxes to the highest bidder.
These bidders, the tax farmers or zamindars, their main goal was just profit, I assume.
Exactly. Maximum profit, short term. They had zero incentive to invest in the land, improve irrigation, or help the peasants, the ryots, increase production. Their only goal was to squeeze as much revenue out as possible to meet the company's demands and line their own pockets.
So the burden on the actual farmers just kept increasing.
Immensely. Crushing demands. Many peasants just couldn't cope. They abandoned their lands. Some, out of desperation, even turned to banditry.
And all of this, the neglect, the exploitation, the pressure on agriculture, it leads to something truly horrific, doesn't it?
Yes. It culminates, tragically, in the Great Bengal Famine of 1770. The combination of company policies, the administrative breakdown, and likely some natural factors too, created this perfect storm.
The scale of it, it's
Yeah.
hard to grasp.
It is. Estimates suggest maybe a third of the entire population of Bengal died. Millions of people. It's an almost unimaginable catastrophe.
And it really highlights the responsibility that comes with power,
Yeah.
even for a company just focused on profit, right?
Absolutely. And the terrible irony. The company's neglect of agriculture, combined with the Nawab having no funds for things like irrigation, actually hurt the company in the long run. Production fell, and eventually so did their own revenue collections. A catastrophic failure on every level.
So this disaster, this breakdown, it couldn't last. The chaos, the famine, even the hit to the company's own bottom line eventually, it forces London to act.
Right. The court of directors realized this system wasn't sustainable, even for them, and the man they sent to fix it was Warren Hastings.
Hastings. He arrives in 1772 as governor of Bengal, becomes the first governor general in 74, and his instructions are clear. Get rid of the dual government.
And he doesn't waste time. He immediately saw the core problem. Separating Diwani and Nizamat just didn't work. It created paralysis.
So what did he do?
He moved decisively. First, he removed the deputy Diwans, Muhammad Reza Khan and Raja Siab Ray, the Indians running things for the company within the Nawab's administration. Put them on trial, even. Then, fundamentally, he brought both sides, revenue collection and civil justice, the Diwani, and criminal justice and police, the Nizamat, directly under company control. He took away the Nawab's remaining shred of authority.
So no more split responsibilities. The company is now openly in charge of everything.
Everything. The Nawab's pension was cut significantly, too, from 26 lakh down to 16 lakh rupees. Symbolic, but also practical.
And there was another big symbolic move, wasn't there? Shifting the capital?
Yes, hugely important. Hastings moved the treasury, the whole center of government, from the old Nawabi capital of Murshidabad to the company's hub, Calcutta.
Making Calcutta the new capital.
Exactly. That move screamed, the facade is over. The company was now officially, de jure as well as de facto, the ruler of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. The dual system was dead.
Okay, so abolishing the dual system was step one. But Hastings didn't stop there, right?
Right.
He recognized the whole administration needed a serious overhaul. Where did he start with reforms? Maybe with the money, the revenue system?
Right, the finances were a mess. Administratively, he put Englishmen collectors in charge of revenue collection in the districts, backed by Indian officers, direct company oversight. And he set up a central board of revenue in Calcutta to supervise the whole thing, trying to bring some order.
And the actual revenue collector, did he change how land taxes were assessed?
He tried. Initially, he experimented with a 5-year settlement system, auctioning rights to the highest bidder again. But that proved problematic, kind of like the old system. So they reverted to annual bidding in 1777. He did, however, try to introduce some measures to protect the ryots, the cultivators, from excessive demands. Later, around 1780, he restructured again, creating a new 4-member revenue board. It was an ongoing process trying to find a workable system.
What about the economy more broadly? We talked about the abuse of das tax. Did he tackle that?
He did, and this was a big one. Hastings banned the private use of das tax by company employees. That single move cut out a huge source of corruption and significantly boosted the company's official revenues.
That must have ruffled some feathers among company staff.
Oh, undoubtedly. But it was crucial for stabilizing finances. He also tried to streamline trade by getting rid of lots of small, pesky custom houses that hindered the flow of goods, and he lowered duties on most items except essentials like salt, betel nut, and tobacco. He also consolidated finances in other ways. Took districts like Kora and Allahabad back from the Mughal emperor, who couldn't really hold them anyway, and sold them to the Nawab Wazir of Oud for a hefty 50 lakhs. More cash for the company coffers.
And the justice system. That was in chaos, too. What reforms did he bring there?
This was another major area. In 1772, he set up a system of courts in each district, Diwani Adalats, civil courts, run by the English collectors, and Faujdari Adalats, criminal courts, run by Indian judges, qazis, and muftis.
And so, separate courts for civil and criminal matters at the district level. What about appeals?
He established 2 higher courts in Calcutta for that. The Sadar Diwani Adalat, the Supreme Civil Court, and the Sadar Nizamat Adalat, the Supreme Criminal Court. This created a clearer judicial hierarchy. He also started the very important and very complex task of trying to codify Hindu and Muslim personal laws so judges had some kind of consistent reference.
And crucially, trying to tackle corruption within the judiciary itself.
Yes, judges were given fixed salaries and strictly forbidden from accepting gifts or presents, which had been a huge problem. It was about professionalizing the judiciary and building some public trust, or at least predictability.
So Hastings' reforms were sweeping. They really set a blueprint for future British administration, didn't they? But it wasn't just the company acting alone. Parliament back in London was getting more involved.
That's a really important point. London was watching the power the company wielded, the chaos, the potential for corruption. It worried people back home.
Well,
So you see Parliament stepping in. The Regulating Act of 1773 is a landmark. It formally creates the post of Governor General, makes Bengal supreme over the other presidencies, Madras and Bombay.
and it tried to curb private enrichment.
Yes, it explicitly forbade company servants from engaging in private trade, trying to separate personal gain from company business.
And that oversight increased over time.
It did. Pitt's India Act in 1784 went further. It set up a board of control in England, directly appointed by the government, to supervise the company's civil, military, and revenue affairs. It really tightened the leash, reducing the power of the company's shareholders over actual governance.
So the company's slowly transforming from a trading body with political power to more of an administrative arm of the British state.
Absolutely. That trend continues. Think about the Charter Act of 1813. It ends the company's trade monopoly in India except for tea and the China trade. This opens India up to private British merchants, investors, even missionaries.
A big shift.
Huge. And then by 1833, another Charter Act basically says the company's main job is now administration. It ceases its commercial functions almost entirely. The Governor-General of Bengal is even renamed the Governor-General of India. The transformation is pretty much complete.
Now, going back to the ground level, after Hastings' initial fixes, did the way revenue was collected keep changing? You mentioned the permanent settlement.
Yes, the experimentation continued. Lord Cornwallis, who came after Hastings, introduced the permanent settlement in Bengal in 1793. This was a really big deal.
What did it do?
It fixed the land tax amount permanently. In theory, this gave stability. But it also recognized the zamindars, the tax collectors, as landowners, effectively making the peasants, the ryots, their tenants.
And that often didn't work out well for the peasants, I imagine?
Often not, no. They lost traditional rights and were subject to the zamindar's demands. It created a new landowning class, but often at the expense of the cultivators.
Was that system used everywhere?
No, it was different elsewhere. In parts of southern India, particularly Madras, they adopted the Rayatwari system, championed by Thomas Monroe. The idea there was to bypass intermediaries like zamindars and have the government settle the revenue directly with the individual peasant farmer, the ryot.
Different approaches, but the underlying goal remained the same.
Pretty much. Revenue collection was still the absolute core function of the company state. It often ate up almost half the entire government budget. Maximizing revenue was always paramount.
So, beyond administration and tax, how did the company actually build its empire? What were the other pillars, the army, for instance?
The army was crucial, obviously. It saw a huge expansion and reorganization. The Bengal army became particularly famous. They recruited heavily from North India, especially high-caste Hindus, Rajputs, Brahmins known as Purbiyas. This army became renowned for its discipline and its effectiveness, a key tool of control and expansion.
And the civil service, to run this growing administration.
That also became much more formalized. Reforms aimed to create this elite core of British administrators, selected for talent, to manage everything: customs, taxes, justice, public works, the steel frame of the Raj, as it was later called.
And trade. The company started as traders, but how did trade itself change under their rule?
It fundamentally shifted. India went from being a major exporter of high-value manufactured goods, think fine textiles, silks, to becoming primarily an exporter of raw materials.
Raw materials like?
Raw cotton for Britain's mills, opium, indigo for dyes. And in return, India became a massive captive market for British factory-made goods, especially textiles, a complete reversal of the earlier pattern.
And you mentioned opium. That became incredibly important, didn't it?
Hugely important and hugely controversial. The company cultivated opium in India, often coercively, and then smuggled it into China to trade for tea, which was in massive demand in Britain. This opium trade generated enormous revenues for the company, balancing its books, but it had devastating social consequences in China and led to wars.
Let's touch on the justice system again. After Hastings' initial setup, did it keep evolving?
Yes, it became more centralized and standardized. Supreme Courts were eventually set up in the main presidency towns, Calcutta, Madras, Bombay. These applied English law, creating a parallel system alongside the company's courts. It led to more standardization, but also complexity, navigating between English law and the various Indian customary laws. But the trend was towards a more unified, British-style legal framework.
What about areas like education? Was that purely about administration, or were there other motives?
Education policy saw a definite shift. Early on, under figures like Hastings sometimes, there was a sort of Orientalist approach supporting traditional Indian learning, Sanskrit, Persian. But later, particularly from the 1830s with Macaulay's famous Minute, the push became strongly Anglicist, promoting English language and Western education, science, literature.
Why the shift?
Partly to create a class of Indians who could help administer the empire clerks, lower officials. Partly a belief in the superiority of Western culture and knowledge. This laid the groundwork for modern India's university system, with universities in Calcutta, Bombay, Madras established by 1857, modeled on London University.
And finally, infrastructure. We think of railways and telegraphs with the British Raj. Did the beginnings of that happen under the company?
Yes, the foundations were definitely laid, though maybe slower at first. A universal postal service started in 1837 and really took off with cheap postage stamps after 1854. Very important for communication.
And the telegraph.
Electric telegraphy arrived around 1851. It expanded rapidly and proved absolutely vital for the company during the 1857 uprising, allowing them to quickly send warnings and coordinate troops. A strategic tool.
Railways, too.
The very beginning. The first line opened in 1853, just a short stretch from Bombay to Thane. But ambitious plans were already being drawn up for trunk lines connecting the major regions. The railway age was dawning. And don't forget irrigation. Massive canal projects like the Ganges Canal opened in 1854, the largest in the world at the time. These were huge engineering feats aimed at boosting agriculture, preventing famine, and of course, increasing revenue.
So these infrastructure projects, while serving British interests, did undeniably start to physically connect and change India in profound ways.
Absolutely. They laid the tracks, quite literally, for modern India's infrastructure network.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. From the company's rise through the disastrous dual government to Warren Hastings trying to clean up the mess and lay new foundations, and then seeing how that evolved into a more formal empire with expanding administration, infrastructure, and social change.
It's a period of incredible transformation, isn't it? Seeing a trading company become a state, learning, often brutally, how to govern.
Definitely. And thinking back on that dual government, it was relatively short-lived, only about 7 years, but its impact seems huge.
Oh, unquestionably. It's this stark, almost perfect historical example of the dangers of power without responsibility. How a system set up purely for profit, ignoring the welfare of the governed, could lead directly to famine, chaos, and immense suffering.
It forced a change, a realization perhaps that governance couldn't just be about extraction.
Exactly. It forced the company, and eventually the British state, to confront the responsibilities that came with ruling such a vast territory. The reforms that followed, starting with Hastings, were a direct consequence of that failure.
So a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe ponder. The story of the dual government really exposes the raw, complex ethics of colonial power. How systems designed for financial gain can have these devastating unintended human costs.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What lessons can we draw from that specific historical moment about governance, accountability, and the relationship between power and responsibility? Especially when we look at our own interconnected world today, where global corporations and distant powers still wield immense influence. Something to chew on.